Borders are usually serious, tense places, lines drawn with suspicion, guarded by fences and soldiers. But the US-Canada border is different. For over 5,500 miles, it's mostly just a line of cleared trees, the world's longest undefended boundary. In towns like Derby Line, Vermont, and Stansted, Quebec, the border literally runs through buildings. The Haskell Free Library straddles the line. You can enter in the US and check out a book in Canada. This border is built on trust, not fear. It's a shared backyard where crossing is more like waiting at the post office than facing an armed checkpoint. People cross for weddings, vacations, or just groceries, rarely thinking twice. The US and Canada fought a war in 1812, then decided it was easier to get along. The border became a symbol. Two massive nations sharing a continent in peace. Goods, people, and ideas flowed freely. A relationship so normal, it was almost invisible. No one imagined this gentle line could ever become a source of anger. But in the autumn of 2025, a single decision on a remote highway would put that friendship to its toughest test in a century. The world's friendliest border was about to face a crisis. What happened next would challenge everything both countries thought they knew about each other. And it all started with a toll booth in the wilderness. The open border isn't just symbolic, it's essential to daily life. Hundreds of billions in trade cross every year. A car part made in Ohio might be assembled in Ontario, then sold in Michigan. Families are split across the line. Kids play hockey in neighboring countries. Nurses commute daily, and fishermen sell their catch across borders. In some places, American kids attend Canadian schools, and fire departments respond to calls on both sides. This is a border culture. Neighbors first, citizens second. The system works because both countries trust each other not to disrupt the flow. It's a gentleman's agreement on a continental scale. The prosperity and social ties it creates are too valuable to risk. But in the fall of 2025, that trust was shattered by a government that saw only numbers, not people. Suddenly, the border's openness was in jeopardy. The foundation of 2 centuries of cooperation began to crack. The consequences would be felt by everyone who called the borderlands home. And it all started with a spreadsheet. To understand the crisis, you need to know the Alaska Highway. Built in 1942 by American soldiers on Canadian soil, it was a wartime lifeline, an engineering feat through brutal wilderness. The highway connected Alaska to the rest of the US, transforming isolated outposts into thriving communities. After the war, it became a vital economic artery for Alaska, the Yukon, and northern British Columbia. Groceries, medicine, tourists, all travel this road. For towns like Fort Nelson and Whitehorse, the highway is their main street. It's a symbol of US-Canada partnership, built and maintained together for decades. The Alaska Highway is more than a road. It's a legacy of shared sacrifice. That's why, when a crisis hit in 2025, it felt like a betrayal, not just a policy dispute. The road that once united 2 nations was about to divide them. In September 2025, British Columbia quietly announced a new toll, $750 for any commercial truck or non-resident vehicle using the Alaska Highway. The fee would be collected at a checkpoint near the Yukon border, effective in just 2 weeks. For truckers and travelers, it was a financial wall, not a road fee. A round trip for a trucker meant $1,500 in new costs. For a family in an RV, it meant canceling their dream trip. The toll was imposed without warning, consultation, or debate. Victoria argued it was about fairness. BC taxpayers shouldn't foot the bill for heavy traffic from outsiders. But the move ignored the highway's history as a symbol of cooperation. Overnight, a shared lifeline became a cash grab. Confusion turned to anger on both sides of the border. The friendliest border in the world suddenly had a very expensive gatekeeper. The $750 toll hit hard and fast. Truckers like Dave Miller, who hauled groceries to Alaska, saw their livelihoods vanish as companies canceled contracts. Alaskan store shelves emptied, prices soared, and the flow of goods slowed to a trickle. Tourists canceled trips. Families like the Petersons from Minnesota scrapped their long-planned Alaskan adventure. Lodges, tour operators, and small-town diners in the Yukon and Alaska faced a disastrous season. Even northern BC towns suffered. Their economies depended on highway traffic that suddenly dried up. Seasonal workers couldn't afford the drive to jobs, and families canceled visits. The toll severed connections, isolating communities and disrupting lives. The highway, once a symbol of freedom, became a source of anxiety and hardship. The human cost was immense, far beyond what any budget spreadsheet could capture. The Great Northern Lifeline was being squeezed. Everyone along its length felt the pressure. The crisis was no longer just about money, it was about people. The backlash was immediate and fierce. In Alaska, the toll felt like a blockade. Talk radio exploded, and politicians demanded action. Calls for boycotts and retaliatory tariffs grew louder. In the Yukon, the sense of betrayal was deep. Their economy was strangled by a decision made far away. Northern BC towns felt caught in the crossfire, powerless and frustrated. The toll struck at the heart of a shared identity. Neighbors became adversaries overnight. Online forums turned toxic. Border crossings grew tense, and goodwill evaporated. American politicians threatened retaliation. Canadian leaders condemned the move. The rhetoric escalated, and the relationship that had been the envy of the world was suddenly in jeopardy. The simmering pot of frustration was boiling over. The crisis was no longer just about a toll, it was about trust. The border's spirit of cooperation was at risk of being lost. The crisis became a political standoff between Victoria, Ottawa, and Washington. BC's government insisted the toll was their right, citing budget woes and fairness to taxpayers. Ottawa was caught in the middle, torn between provincial authority and international diplomacy. Washington faced mounting pressure to retaliate, but wanted to avoid a trade war. The stalemate deepened. Victoria wouldn't budge, Ottawa tried to mediate, and Washington threatened action. The BC government underestimated the backlash and the diplomatic headache they'd created. What started as a local budget fix had become an international hornet's nest. Trucks sat idle, rhetoric grew hotter, and the neighborhood was on the verge of a public feud. The world watched as the friendliest border teetered on the edge. As public anger grew, quiet diplomacy began behind the scenes. US and Canadian officials searched for a way out, a solution that didn't involve a trade war. The breakthrough came from diplomats, not politicians. The US agreed to a one-time payment to BC for highway repairs. In return, BC suspended the toll. Both countries created a joint commission to find a long-term funding plan, with modest, pre-approved fees and shared contributions. After 2 weeks of intense talks, the deal was struck. The trucks rolled again, tourists returned, and grocery shelves were restocked. The immediate crisis was over, not with angry speeches, but with quiet cooperation. The border's spirit of partnership had survived, but just barely. The toll's suspension brought relief, but the scars remained. Communities along the highway returned to normal, but trust had been shaken. The crisis revealed how quickly goodwill can be lost, and how fragile even the strongest friendships are. Alaskans remembered feeling held hostage. Canadians remembered the speed of American threats. The lesson was clear: interdependence is real, and unilateral decisions have consequences. The Alaska Highway is a shared asset, requiring constant cooperation. The Joint Commission now faces the task of rebuilding trust and finding a sustainable path forward. The 2025 crisis was a close call, a reminder that quiet cooperation is more powerful than confrontation. The road ahead is long, but for now, it is open. The world's friendliest border survived its toughest test, and the lesson endures. Trust, once broken, must be rebuilt, mile by mile.